Hey everyone, welcome back to my channel. I'm so glad to have you. Today I am going to be talking a little bit about the international experience, within reason, of course, since I am an American and my experience with school may be quite different than the average international student, but I have petitioned some of my amazing international friends who came through BSSM with me during first year and got some good information from them. And so I'm going to give you a pretty basic overview of the process of coming to school here in terms of finances, financial resources, just transitioning well, that kind of thing from my perspective. And you know, how that helps you or doesn't help you, I can't say, but stick around and take what tools you can from it. Yeah, and I will also say some of this information may be subject to change for this particular school year, the 2018-2019 school year, just because of the car fire. I'm not exactly sure how that may change just any number of things pertaining to your housing situation. But I'm still going to give a general overview because the information should still stand, generally speaking, for incoming students this year and future years. And of course, as a disclaimer, I do not represent Bethel or BSSM professionally. This is strictly my information, my personal experience and opinions. Yes. So, that being all out of the way. Financially speaking, because that seems to be the question I get the most from foreign students looking at coming to Bethel. Many of them know the school costs, but they're a little bit confused or questioning about how much should I have overall to live on, you know, living costs, food costs, these sorts of things. And of course, it really depends on, is there just one of you coming? Is there more of you coming? And how much do you eat? How much do you like to go out? What do you plan to do about transportation? What sort of a budget are you prepared for that? If you're not buying a car, or if you are buying a car, you know, so there are so many moving parts to asking those sorts of questions. So for me to give a very general response, you know, is limiting. But I'm going to give what I consider the best information that I can offer you as a general rule, and then you can negotiate these numbers to fit what you anticipate for yourself. You know, you may find that food in America is way cheaper than where you live, and you may otherwise find it's way more expensive than what you're used to. Or that you eat out a lot more here than you did back home, or that you eat in at the house all the time. So, you know, all of these things are going to change your budget, maybe even compared to what you're used to at home. So these are the numbers that I feel suit an American living relatively comfortably here in this environment. And yeah, okay. Sorry, everyone. Just had a minor technical difficulty in my recording there, but I'm back. So basically, the overall amount that I kind of budgeted out when I looked at the numbers and talked to some people came to anywhere between $10,500 and $12,000 being the minimum you would want to have overall to handle 9 months of expenses for the United States. Now, that number is including your tuition costs of roughly $5,000, and that is the amount for one person, okay? So I'm going to break down roughly that $10,500 to $12,000 amount incrementally to tell you how I came up with that amount of money, because I did include in that amount of money the mission trip that you're going to go on in the month of April. So that's something that a lot of people, I don't think, come to school already budgeting towards, but I feel if you can do that ahead of time, all the wiser. Sorry, it's kind of getting dark out here, so the lighting is probably going to change based on how I move around. But yeah, so you will have a missions trip, and it's always highly recommended to try to take the missions trip opportunity. So if you already come financially prepared for that, then you don't sweat it, you're excited, it's something you look forward to rather than another thing you have to fundraise for later on in the school year. But whatever you do is fine. I just went ahead and included that amount in your overall financial budget. So here's how I broke down that amount of money. So let's say $10,500 is all you can overall come up with. So out of that amount, you're going to subtract $5,000 off the top for tuition, which, depending on when you're watching this video, you've probably already got your tuition paid for, and now you're just focusing on raising the last of your living costs. My estimated amount of rent that the average person will be paying per month, if they're willing to share a room, is about $250 a month, okay? If you want to have a private room, you're almost always going to pay more than that unless you just really are blessed with an amazing situation. A private room is always going to cost you, anywhere from $300 to $350 and up. I've seen a lot of people paying $500 and $600 a month for private rooms. But if you're willing to share with someone for the 9 months you're here, you can probably anticipate anywhere between $200 and $300-ish a month. Then you're going to have a certain amount of utilities you pay every month, and that's all, of course, going to break down based on how many roommates you're going to have. So you could be paying anywhere from $35 to $75 a month in utilities, depending on how much utilities you use, and of course how many people you're living with. So estimate that number. Then I budgeted $150 a month for food. Now that is a really short or small food budget, I would say. But that's really for people who are okay with eating at home a lot. So that's really going to the grocery store, setting yourself up for at least, a couple of weeks, like, I don't know, $80-ish every 2 weeks. Still pretty tight, but that was kind of the basic amount I was thinking maybe people could live off of. I usually eat on $200 a month, I'd say, for myself. But yeah. Then, of course, you're going to have to anticipate your mission trip costs. Now, mission trips cost a varying amount. It really depends on the length of the mission trip. It also depends on where you're going. If you stay in the United States, they can tend to be the least expensive trips, not always, but they could be. Really depends on where you go in the States. But I've seen trips that were almost $3,000 and some trips that were $600. So it really, 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 really depended. But I went ahead in this amount that I was considering. I budgeted into that budget about $1,500 roughly for your missions trip. So you're not looking at, always just the cheapest trip, but not necessarily the most expensive either. Because that way, if you already came with a lump sum, at least $1,000 to put towards it, if you have to raise more because you see a missions trip that just blows your mind and you have to be a part of it, but it's like $2,500, well, you already have a huge chunk of that paid for and ready to be used, and then you can just fundraise for the rest, later on in that school year. So, things to consider. Let's see. So, let's go ahead. I'm going to put this amount in my calculator and see where we're at, and then see what else I would add to that. So that was the $5,000 towards tuition. And then we said $250 a month times 9 months. That's $2,250. Plus your food for 9 months. That's at $3,600. Plus your $5,000, so we're at $8,600, plus we're going to throw in that $1,500 for your missions trip, so that's got you right at $10,100. So the only amount I've not included in that is your utilities. So I put that at $75 a month, a little bit on the high side for utilities, but that's bringing us up to $10,775 so far, okay? So $10,775. Now that included school, utilities, rent, food, and $1,500 towards your missions trip, all taken care of. So the only amount in there that I'm not including is miscellaneous expenses like entertainment, unforeseen, unexpected expenses, anything related to insurance, because, if you rent a car, you'll have to have some sort of car insurance. I'm sure you have to have some sort of travel insurance or whatever to be here in the States. And then and I'm not including transportation costs like gas, or if you decide to buy or rent a vehicle while you're here, because that's really totally going to be so general or so specific to you that it would be really hard for me to budget. So on the most bare minimum, if you're sharing a room, you're not buying a car, and you're willing to eat at home on a pretty tight financial budget for your food, you could get away with just under $11,000 all total. So if I took out your tuition costs, let's say you've already paid your tuition costs, then that's about $5,775, or let's round up to $6,000 that you would need to have minimum to live on, at an absolute minimum. So of course, I would always recommend, if it's possible, to raise as much more above that as you possibly can. I would say to live fairly comfortably, I wouldn't raise any less than a total of $12,000, including your tuition. So I would always fundraise as much as I can. So the more you do that, the more comfortably you can live. And of course, that amount also does not include airfare. So depending on where you're coming from, your airfare could be, $400 round trip, or it could be $2,000 round trip. And of course, you have to book a round trip ticket, as you know. You're not allowed to come, as far as I know, on a one-way ticket to the United States for a 9-month length of stay. So when you are accepted to BSSM as an international student, they will give you an I-20 form, and that also has a pretty decent breakdown of what they recommend you having financially. And that I-20 form is what you're going to use when you go apply for your visa, because they have already worked with the American, Customs Department or whatever international agencies with all their visa requirements to find out the minimum amount that the U.S. government would require people to have in their bank accounts before committing to any length of stay in the United States. So as far as I know, that amount of money that I just quoted you is roughly almost exactly what the U.S. government is also going to require. And I know that because I spoke to several of my friends who traveled here as foreign exchange students and went through the visa process and were told how much they needed to have. So BSSM is really good once you're accepted to give you a pretty decent breakdown of what you'll need to have to come here. But I'm looking up some information that my friend gave me to be sure I'm telling you the right thing. So he said, yeah, you'd want to have at least about now he was from Ireland, about $8,000 in living costs, and of course your $5,000 for tuition. So he recommended about $13,000 that you would bring with you. And if you're coming with more than one person, he recommended anywhere between $22,000 and $30,000 if there's more than one person. So decent amount of chunk change, but hey, that's all part of it, and God is so faithful. Once you get here, and even before you get here, you're going to hear radical financial testimonies of God just coming through for people in ways that just seem so insurmountable. So I just really want to encourage you that even if these numbers on the front end sound so large and so no way, I promise you, people with absolutely no financial means or way of coming here, countless stories of them making it and God just doing radical stuff. So if you have a yes in your spirit towards God and you have a yes from God towards this, he's going to make it happen. But it's still wiser to know roughly what do I need, so what can I start asking the Father for and begin praying into and sharing with my community. Let's see. Now, as far as the visa process goes, the government will require some sort of proof when you're going to your visa interview that you do have a certain amount of money in the bank ready to go for the U.S. Now, I have heard of radical testimonies of people who either weren't asked for verification or didn't have the money in the account, and through I don't know what other than the Lord and, favor, they were still let in to the school because the school had accepted them and sent the information, and the visa office just, gave them a lot of mercy and grace. But in most cases, they are going to want to see, okay, let's see a bank statement, let's see proof that you have this minimum amount to live on while you're in the States before we will approve your visa. That's kind of standard. So you just want to have that in mind when you go to your interview. If you don't have the amount in there, of course, technically you could be denied, but you can always reapply. So don't always take an initial no as a firm no, okay? Yeah, my friend James says he knows of people who turned up to the U.S. with $50 in their bank account, and they got their visa and everything before they got here. So, believe, you know. And as far as applying for your visa, from what I've been told, it's about a 2-week turnaround time of being accepted or denied for it. So the absolute latest you would want to apply for it, usually speaking, is August 15th before the school year began, in order to hopefully get it right before you're getting on that plane to head over stateside. So the sooner you can apply for it and get it, the better. But obviously for most people, they're having to fundraise for a good portion of that year. So however long can they, how long can I put that off before I go for it? Usually August 15th is about as long as you want to wait. But then again, there have been so many miraculous stories of God coming through for people at the very last minute. Some people even miss the first week or 2 weeks of school at times waiting on their visa. But hey, when you get it, you get it. That's all that matters. So also, there's a website called wise.com. It's a great way for internationals to send money, pay tuition and rent, and he said it was the cheapest way by far to do that. So I think it's kind of like a version of PayPal that doesn't take as much money. I don't know what kind of money transfer programs y'all are used to using wherever in South America or Asia or Europe you may live. But he highly recommended wise.com, and I'll link that down below as well so you can take a look at it for yourself. And there's other things we use in the States, an application on our phones called Cash App, and that is used by pretty much everyone. I highly recommend you having that on your phone. It links to a bank account. I don't know how that works for foreign students and bank accounts that aren't in the U.S., but I did know many students from South Africa, for example, who used that app successfully. So I don't know if that's because they had an American bank account or not, but it has always been the way. Like, my roommates pay their rent to me through that app. There's so many opportunities to buy things and give things and bless people and sell things through Cash App. Venmo is another one, and I'll link these all down below. These are just apps that just make things really simple for people, as well as, like, when you're getting rides, if you don't have a car but you want to bless your friend, your driver, whatever, with, $10 for gas, Cash App is so simple instead of always having to have cash on you or making all these ATM stops. That's annoying. So if you can get Cash App on your phone, if you don't already know about that app, then great. Here you go in advance. You can check that out and see how that might work with your bank account system. Other advice would be to find Facebook BSSM groups that are relevant to your country. So almost every nation on some level has a BSSM Facebook page that helps people from their country transition really well in and out of BSSM, because they've paved the road for you. Like, there's no sense in reinventing the wheel. Like, just do a few keyword searches for, like, BSSM Ireland or BSSM Brazil or whatever, and you're going to find pages dedicated to people from your nation who've gone before you that are happy and ready to help you and may have crazy good connections with housing and anything else under the sun. So I highly recommend you looking into pages like that, because they're going to give you way better information than I'm going to be able to give you now, because I'm not even walking in your same shoes. But roughly half, if not more than half, I think sometimes, of BSSM is foreign exchange students. So you guys, are so brave and so faith-filled to make that journey here, and God just, comes through in radical ways for that group of students regularly. It blows my mind watching what he does for them, and they tend to be very generous as well. Let's see. As far as living in the States, of course, please go back and watch some of my other videos that are going to talk a little bit more about housing and transportation. They just may answer some practical information or practical questions you may have. Of course, we don't have a public transportation system here like you would be used to. where you come from. So there's going to be some adjustment. It's not super bike friendly, although there are bike paths, but it's way more car-based living. People get around everywhere by their cars. There is free bus transportation for international students in Reading as long as you have a BSSM ID badge. You can use the bus anytime you want for free as long as it's running. So yeah, there are ways and means to adjust, but just come here knowing Reading is a very small community, and it's not a city in the sense of like a New York City or an LA by any means. So it feels very small town. It looks very small town. And so you have to learn how to adjust to small town life that does not have some of the amenities that a city, and especially a city in Europe or South America, might have. That being said as well, you're likely to live with Americans or Canadians and every other kind of person. So coming in with a ton of grace and a ton of openness to the culture. This part of America is super different than the East Coast or the northern states in America. The West Coast is its own country in its own way sometimes. So a lot of the Americans that you're going to meet coming here aren't even from California themselves, and they come from a totally unique culture in America than they're experiencing here. So every American you meet isn't like your typical American. And there's no typical American. America is such a melting pot of people. Just let your stereotypes just fall at the wayside and come with a lot of grace and mercy, because it's not like it is on TV, right? Like the regular people with issues and problems and differences, and it's just not like TV. I'm sure you know that, but I feel like sometimes it still has to be said because it's silly the way some people anticipate America being, and then they're kind of like shocked or disappointed when it's not what they thought it was going to look like from the TV and the movies. But you know that. You're wise and intelligent beings. I would say honor is always the key. Honor releases a flow of grace and a flow of life. And so transitioning into your housing and the cultural dynamics of this world you're going to have in Reading will always go over most smoothly when you come with a ton of honor and willingness to learn and open yourself up to the culture. And Americans are going to say sometimes silly things, and if you're English, they'll probably ask you if you know the Queen, and they'll probably mention the one friend they have in your nation and ask you if you know them. It's okay. Laugh it off. I've traveled quite a bit. I've lived in a lot of different countries, but I know a lot of other Americans have not. And you're coming to a school that has a lot of young people that just haven't had the life experiences to go a bunch of places. So they don't know, and they're going to be just as interested in you and your culture as hopefully you are in our culture here. Anticipate the silliness, have a lot of grace, and then anticipate meeting some fantastically well-traveled, interesting and intelligent Americans also that live here, and that will be really curious about your life and your culture, so share it. And I would say the only thing I was always a little bummed about in first year and have just kind of noticed living in this community is a lot of the foreign students click together based on their culture or their nation. And while I totally get it, like I probably would be inclined to do something similar depending on where I was at, just because sometimes, if you're French, you want to speak French. Like you're German, you want to be with the Germans. And Germans tend to be the largest student body group we have. The Germans make up a ton of students. But, when they all hang out together, it limits the experience, I think. It just keeps you from getting to know as many people as you probably could, and it also keeps other people from getting to know you that probably would otherwise. So I would just say, come as open as possible. There's nothing wrong with spending tons of time with your own community, your own culture and nation, but hey, there's probably no other time in the whole world where you're ever going to be in a room with this many people from this many different nations and cultures, and I highly recommend branching out and sharing your culture with them, asking questions. Don't let the language barrier hold you back. This is a place where fear and shame are broken off of you. So fully engage, like press through, because people want to know you. They want to know who you are, where you're from, what you're carrying, where you're going. Chad Dedman, he spoke in our first year, and he said, don't be so worried about trying to get around Bill Johnson and Chris Valadin and these great leaders. He said, try to get around the people to your right and to your left, because those are the future Bill Johnsons and the future Chris Valadins. And getting to know these giants that are actually around you is going to pay off way more in the long run than trying to get in the good graces of any of the leaders in the church. So I live by that. I think that that's really, really sound advice. So don't forsake the person to your right and left. Don't forsake someone just because they're not from your country, or they don't speak your language, or they don't get you right away. Have grace and take your time. There's so much value from coming and being a part of this. So I hope that helps on some level. I hope those numbers give you a grid and a framework for what you should anticipate raising. A good $13,000 would be, for a single person, a really solid number to keep in mind as you're moving forward. And for those of you who are coming this year, BSSM has hired a special person just for housing. And they have even opened up some housing in Simpson College, some dorm room housing. I think it's like $675 a month for a dorm room that I think is shared with one person. So kind of pricey, but that does include your utilities. It includes food you can eat on the campus. It includes access to the university's library, their gym, and their prayer chapel. So Simpson University is a private Christian university here in Reading that has a really good relationship with Bethel. And they've opened up, I think, like 180 dorm rooms for incoming BSSM students, because they know the Carr fire has displaced a lot of students that had housing arranged or thought they were going to have housing arranged. And now with all the fire and so many people who lost their homes, it's just messed up everything. So BSSM is doing everything they can to create new avenues for housing, and Simpson University is one of those ways. So I'll try to link the information to that down below as well, so you can look into it. Again, yeah, it's really, really pricey. But if nothing else comes through, at least you do know that that's available, and you can apply for that housing and go that route too. So that will, of course, pretty substantially increase your budget. But the nice thing is it does have your food costs already wrapped into that right there on the campus. The only thing you'd have to buy above and beyond that is any food you wanted to bring to eat while you're in class during school, since you obviously can't like slip away and go back and eat lunch at the university before, in between classes. So you will still buy some stuff at the grocery store no matter what. So I bless you, amazing foreign exchange students coming to BSSM. I bless your efforts, your passion, your zeal, your hunger for God, and all you're doing to get here. And it will be so well worth it and so rewarding. Have a good one. Leave your questions below, and I'll try to answer them if I didn't answer them in this video, okay? Bye, guys.